Hello to you all, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Anne. As we all know, we were been in the UK for the past 6 months under Fiance Visa, and now it's our turn to process our further leave to remain marriage or FLRM visa, which we will be entitled to stay and extend for another 2.5 years or equivalent to 30 months. And I'll be glad to share with you guys the requirements that we submitted and walk you through some facts and benefits that you will be entitled to under FLRM or further leave to remain visa. So without further ado, I made a small presentation about it, and let's watch. A FLRM visa allows the person applying to remain with their UK partner in the UK for 30 months. In other words, an FLRM application can only be submitted by those who are already inside the UK. A FLRM visa will allow the applicant to work in the UK. Please note that if an applicant is currently on a UK Fiancé visa and is applying for an FLRM visa, they will not be allowed to work up until the point in which the applicant receives the notification from the Home Office that their FLRM application has been granted. So these guys were already self-explanatory. So if you haven't had the FLRM visa granted yet, we are not supposed to work, or we are even not allowed to work inside the UK, as the employers anyway will be requiring or asking for your right to work. So there's no point of starting your application or pursuing an application for a job at the moment. A FLRM visa can lead to indefinite leave to remain or ILR, as well as British citizenship. Generally speaking, the applicant will need to be granted 2 spouse or FLRM visas. This is because partner visa applications which satisfy the standard immigration rules will be issued 33 or 30-month partner visas on what is referred to as a 5-year route to settlement or indefinite leave to remain. A FLRM visa will not allow an applicant to claim most benefits, tax credits, or house assistance that are paid by the state. Technically, those who are in the UK on an FLRM visa will not be able to receive public funds. Public funds are defined in paragraph 6 of the immigration rules and include disability leaving allowance, attendance allowance, housing benefit, carer's allowance, income support, council tax benefit, child tax credit, state pension credit, working tax credit, severe disablement allowance, many aspects of universal credit, job seekers allowance, personal independence payment, and council tax reduction. One more tip. A person who entered the UK on a fiancé or proposed civil partner visa, it should be noted that the time spent in the UK on a fiancé visa does not count towards the 5-year qualifying period for ILR or indefinite leave to remain. So that means the 6 months that we spent under fiancé visa will not be counted on the ILR route that we're about to take. So they will start counting from your first FLRM, which is the 2.5 years or 30 months, and then another FLRM extension. So here are the requirements we submitted for our FLRM visa or further leave to remain marriage documents. And for the applicant, under proof of application, you need to submit a cover letter, which a cover letter for UK visa is instrumental in persuading the ECO or the entrance clearance officer that you meet the visa requirements and convey additional information, especially if you have some explaining to do with the documents you submitted. So for example, you think that you have some documents that need some further explaining, or even like your bank statements or your husband's bank statements that need some explaining and needed to be in detail, so you can put it under your cover letter. So you will also need to submit your passport. Obviously, that would be your old and new with the visa stamps. You also need to submit your UK VI and IHS payment confirmation, but this is not necessary really, so we just try to add it on the documents as proof of payment. And you will also need to submit your husband support letter that states your husband's willingness to provide and help you financially in processing your visa extension and can look after you and your child without relying on public funds. So you will also need to sign for a family consent form where any of the information or documentation also relates to someone else, like your husband, for example. If you have a joint bank statement or joint utility bills, you should ask for the person to sign part 2 of the consent form. And also there is a family declaration form, and both of these forms will be available on the UK website, which I'll be linking on the description below. And this family declaration will be your husband needing to sign to prove your relationship and status of your marriage. For the other section, this is actually those supporting documents or relevant documents that wasn't been asked during the uploading of the documents. If you think it's necessary that you need to provide this certain document, you can put it on the other section tab. So in other documents section, these were the documents I submitted that support my claim that my parents were already old enough to look after my baby if I happen to leave her in the Philippines. So I presented my parents' marriage certificate, my parents' senior citizens ID, and under residence in the UK section, this will be your correspondence of proof of address, either a joint one with you and your husband or your own statements which displays your name on the address that you were currently living in. But in fact, we are not required to provide proof of address such as bank statements and utility bills, etc. on our first FLRM extension when switching from FV, as the form we're using were standard and general list and used until you apply for ILR or indefinite leave to remain. So that means that the form that the UK immigration were providing is actually good until indefinite leave to remain application. So it was kind of standard. So for our first FLRM, we are not really required because the HO or the entrance clearance officer knows that we just stayed here for 6 months and we haven't established our life yet, or we haven't even had work. So in this application, it's just my husband who submitted his, and we were still approved. So that's like one proof that you're really not required to actually submit a proof of address or joint bank statements or whatsoever in processing this application. So what my husband submitted is his water bill, which is for 2 months. That would be the preferred months to cover on his part supposedly. But if we will be applying for the next FLRM extension, then we're obliged to submit our own correspondence or joint utility bills. So technically, your husband needs to provide 6 documents or 6 correspondence from other. So that would be like 2 months each from other sources. So he will have like total of 6. And on your part, you need to also provide 6, which also equivalent to 2 months on each resources. So for my husband, he submitted his water bill for 2 months and should be spread within the 2 years before the application. So it doesn't really necessary to provide the first 2 months recent. So he can pull up one water bill statement from last year and then provide the current year whatsoever. And he also provide his telephone bill for 2 months as well, and the gas and electricity bill for 2 months. So that's total of 6 correspondence he submitted. And under finances category, the financial requirement for one person or individual is 18,600, which your husband supposedly be earning, or whoever sponsoring you should be earning. But in our case, since I got one dependent, my husband should be earning at least 22,400 pounds annually, and this can be shown by providing the financial documents below. So he submitted his recent P60. He also submitted his 6 months payslip, which is under 28 days rule. That means like from the last month payslip and 5 months prior. So you have to make sure that you're submitting the recent payslip that he have on hand while you're doing your application, and that should be not less than 28 days, and then give the backdated payslips for the past 5 months. So same as the bank statements, he has to also provide the current ones that he have, or the recent transactions that he have on his bank statements backwards for the last 5 months. And he also need to submit his letter of employment, which is also under 28 days rule, and same rules applied, and his council tax bills. So council tax would be normally sent out in April in each year, so make sure to provide the latest one you got. And under life events, so this will be the documents we submitted. So that will be my husband's divorce decree letter, because he was been divorced, so he needs to provide it, and our wedding photos and marriage certificate. Under medical information, I just submitted my GP registration letter. And under sponsors, we submitted my husband's passport with stamps, my husband's title deed, and my husband's annual mortgage statement. So for my education, you have to use your IELTS B1 certificate again if you've gotten the B1. But if you manage to just get A1 from your Fiance Visa, you have to do your exam again for the English test. You should get either A2, but if I were you, I would strongly suggest to get the B1 instead, so you can use it until your ILR application. So under dependent requirements, these are the documents we submitted. So under proof of identity or travel history, we submitted her PSA birth certificate, her passport, and under other section, I submitted my affidavit of sole custody that declares that I am the only parent responsible for my child and my solo parental rights, since his father or biological father was not indicated in the birth certificate in the first place. So I also submitted affidavit of abandonment that states that the father abandoned and didn't receive any financial support from the biological father, and when does your relationship end. So I also submitted my daughter hospital bills that I signed and paid for, and my PhilHealth proof of beneficiary that states that my daughter is one of my beneficiary on my PhilHealth. So I also presented my solo parent ID, her grandparents' marriage certificate that proves that they're old enough, and their grandparents' senior citizen ID, which would back up my claim that my parents were not already physically healthy to look after a 3-year-old child, or even when she grows up. So under life events of my daughter, so we submitted just my daughter and husband's pictures together. So under medical information, I submitted her GP registration confirmation letter. And under sponsors section, we submitted my husband's P60, his 6 months pay slips again, under 28 days rule, his 6 months bank statements, his letter of employment, same, under 28 days rule, and then his passport with stamps, his house title deed, and his annual mortgage statement, council tax bill, and his support cover letter for my daughters. Like, he states there that he will be responsible for her welfare without relying to public funds as usual. So for proof of application, we submitted the UK VI and IHS payment confirmation, her passport, my family declaration form, and family consent form. And after you completed gathering your requirements, you're now ready to apply and upload your documents online. I will provide the link in the description box below. So for all of you guys who's wondering how much will an FLRM visa fee cost, so the home office FLRM visa fee cost £1,048 per applicant or dependent. Number 2, how much do you need to pay for the immigration health surcharge? Well, for the immigration health surcharge, that will cost you around 1,560 per applicant and dependent. This is a compulsory fee that provides the applicants with the access to the National Health Service or NHS for the duration of their FLRM visa. After you successfully submitted your application online and pay for your visa and NHS fees, you will be redirected to the UK Vica's appointment website to do your biometrics. And one important tip, you should try booking your appointment a month earlier on your desired date so you can avoid paying a chargeable appointment fee, which will cost you around £264, and you don't want to do that. You don't also have to worry if you actually book your biometrics after your visa expired, so long as you actually submitted your online application prior to your visa expiry date, so long as you submit your online application a day before your visa expires, as your status will remain the same till you receive the HO decision, just like we did. So that's all for now, guys, and I'll be putting all the helpful references and those website links on the description box below, so make sure to check it out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!